It's a new year, but halfway through the school year. With me today, Superintendent Meg Mayo Brown and Chair of the School Committee, Chris Joyce. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Paula. Great to be here.
So we're halfway through the school year. It kind of has to feel pretty good, right? 2018 into 2019 now, but we're right in the heart of budget season. So Chris and Meg, tell us a little bit about the process of budget for schools.
Well, at this point in time, the principals and department heads are submitting their budget requests for school committee consideration. So that's where we are in the process. Principals and directors would submit, if they need new positions, new materials, so they provide a rationale and a budget amount, and we start compiling that data to present to the school committee. And then from there?
So we have a number of presentations starting at our next school committee. And it's throughout the winter. It's a moving target because it's constantly moving, and projections on what the revenue is going to be versus the expenses. And at the end of the cycle is in April, we then vote on the proposed budget, and then that goes to the town and town council. Am I right on those dates?
You are. Mm-hmm.
And being on the school committee now for a number of years, it took a while to figure out, okay, well, we're starting in presentation, in early February, but it changes as it goes because what becomes a priority sometimes has to change due to funding sources or due to changes within the district. So it's a very fluid motion as it goes across.
And that's interesting too, because there's multiple facets of budgets as well, so we can break it down to viewers. There's buildings and assets as budgetary items, things that have to be repaired, things that are in motion that have, maybe need additional money. And then, like you said, there's positions, there's new coursework materials. How does the superintendent work with the school committee to kind of balance those different needs?
Well, I think the great thing about the town of Barnstable is its capital improvement project budgeting. So those major projects, whether it's a roof replacement, a library renovation, are handled through a separate budgeting process. And so we work with the school committee on here's what we're thinking in terms of our priorities for the capital improvement projects, and we have that discussion with the school committee. The operating budget, 80% of our operating budget is primarily people. And so the school committee always wants to ensure that we're keeping our class sizes lower and reasonable. So that's always the focus is the classroom first, and then we see what other funding we have available to supplement those types of classroom positions.
Right. How do residents get involved in this process? Like, you want to hear input, right?
Yeah.
Probably through the public comment process at school committee meetings, which is surprising we don't have more input than we've had. One thing I will tell you, the budget doesn't move a lot. We have X number of dollars. There'll be a little increase in the upcoming year where people take up the majority of the budget. So obviously we're trying to do the best we can with the revenue allotted, but it doesn't give a lot of room for a lot of changes. So a lot of times if we're going in a direction where the district is changing and we need help in areas, that means we have to maybe cut back in some other areas that we don't need as much. And it's challenging, especially where the needle doesn't move that much because it's there's just a little bit of money, new funds, and by the time you cost of living and all those other things get added in, it doesn't leave much on the wish list.
There's a number of different types of programs out there, but before we get into the things that are actually happening on the turf or the fields of the schools right now, Innovation School, where are we?
Right, so so there's a group of what we refer to as stakeholders, primarily teachers. Myself, Barbara Dunn, represents the school committee on this stakeholder group that is designing the Innovation School application. That application defines what the school's mission and focus and sort of operation would be. So there's been much work, and that's that model is to replace the Horace Mann charter school model that's currently in existence. So the stakeholder group has been meeting for a couple of months now. Great progress has been made. In fact, this week, the teachers at the community charter are going to vote on whether or not they accept the Innovation School plan. If they have to accept it by a 2/3 majority. And then the process goes to the school committee after that, because the school committee is actually the authority that authorizes an innovation school for up to 5 years. So we've wrapped up on designing the school, if you will, and now it's into the technical aspects of seeking and getting votes of the teachers and the school committee as well.
And the school committee prepared to look at this as the alternative to the charter school. And what does an innovation school give the school committee that a charter school did not?
The simplest way to explain it is an innovation school from a classroom type setting is going to be very similar to a charter school. Just the administration of that school is run under the direction of the school district, where that building was run more by a board of directors. Their funding still came out of our budget. So it basically, and the stakeholders and then the teachers in the school that are working at that, I think are doing a tremendous job in what they're trying to achieve there.
Okay, excellent. So now we'll move on to just recently in the last week or so, ALICE training has started with some of, I know our intern came in and said he just had some of his training. So let's explain what ALICE training is for those who don't have children in school and haven't gotten that information.
Sure. So ALICE is an acronym for our safety or our emergency response should there be a school intruder. So our teachers have gone through ALICE training since last summer. They took an online component of it. We had a number of professional development sessions just for teachers, because we want to be sure that our building staff is very clear on what the ALICE protocol is, which basically stands for alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. And I think what's most important is the E in that, in ALICE, because if it's safe to do so, we want our educators to make decisions to get our students out of school safely and to a safe place. So that's been much of the training. Now we're shifting our efforts to ensuring that our students understand the protocol and have opportunities to practice it. Because what we know is the more opportunities that everyone has to practice, should there ever be a situation where we have a school intruder, they're going to rely on those practice sessions to really inform the action steps that they need to take. So schools we're very sensitive to the developmental needs of our children, and an ALICE drill in kindergarten is going to look very different than an ALICE drill at the high school level. So the high school students yesterday went through different scenarios. We have a great partnership with the Barnstable Police Department. We really do this we co-facilitate the sessions, and just can't say enough about our school resource officers that are leading this initiative with us. So this week, parents will probably hear at home that that their children have participated in some type of session developmentally appropriate for their age.
Right, and that kind of brings me to the one of the last topics we'll talk about is social emotional learning. It seems to be a catchphrase that sort of started to come out, but it's really literally educating the whole child, not just the academic, but everything else that wraps around that.
Right.
And I'll start with you, Meg. Talk about social emotional learning in the schools. It's been 2 years now?
Yes.
2 years since this programming has come in.
Right.
Are you starting to see something with students, kinder, gentler world out there?
Right, I believe we are. And social emotional learning, we're putting a significant amount of resources into it. The school committee has adopted a vision around it. We have a universal curriculum to teach our students. And when we talk about social emotional learning, lots of times folks will say, what are you talking about? Well, it's a student's ability to self-manage, be self-aware, to make responsible decisions. And that covers the ground from preschool to seniors in high school. So it's something that we've put in that, again, it depends on the different grade level in terms of what that might look like in the classroom. At the elementary level, it's very much building a community sense in the classroom and having a community, a positive learning community. So teachers will begin each morning with what we call morning meeting. It's a way for all kids to come together, have a greeting, have a message. We kind of start our day off in a very positive way. And the teacher language that occurs in something like morning meeting will be carried out through the day. Again, the goal is to build that positive learning environment and to help our students are faced with a ton of issues, regardless of their grade level. And I feel like it's a responsibility of our school system to help them not only learn an academic skill set, but a social emotional skill set to navigate the world in which they live in now.
Right. And Chris, when you look at, the makeup of a school committee and you start talking about social emotional learning, where it seems that, more residents are like, well, I got to pay taxes so you can, teach science. How do you balance these types of programs with that academic mindset maybe of some of our older residents who haven't come in contact with children that are facing really different stuff nowadays?
Well, I mean, as Meg alluded to, these children today are facing challenges that we never thought would be brought in front of them. And there's a lot of skill set that we learned as kids just by human nature and by our culture and day-to-day activities that was just commonplace, and that's not happening today anymore. And if we're not preparing these kids, if we can get these kids by the time they're done and walked out of Barnstable Public Schools to believe in themselves, to have self-respect, to be able to be in a setting where they can speak for themselves and stand up for themselves, in my eyes, that is as important as anything else that we're going to teach them, because that's going to carry them very far in life. And that's just one simple part of social and emotional learning. There are so many other aspects that we would need a lot longer to discuss. But I think as any resident or taxpayer looking at this, if we're just teaching them reading, writing, math, engineering, and not teaching these other skills, we've failed drastically.
Right. And something that I had heard, I've been talking to Gina Hurley, who runs this program. She really said that these are skills that these children will take into adulthood into employment skills.
No question, absolutely no question.
So what would be, we'll end on a really positive note. What are some of those skills that our employers are looking for that this program's going to do?
Well, let's ask an employer.
Well, I mean, for instance, when one of our students goes to college and afterwards they're applying or not going to college and they're going to apply for a job, and hopefully we've got them college or career ready, and they go in their interview and they can look someone in the eye and believe in themselves that they can get that job, instead of not addressing someone correctly, not looking someone in the eye, not believing in themselves. So that is just one little iota. Or as they walk out of and go to college, and how are they going to interact with people they're living with, or in a different setting where they don't have so much control over them, where they have to make decisions. Hopefully we've taught them to act well with others and lead themselves instead of be followers.
It's also being very kind as well. I love the morning meeting. I think that is something that growing up in the 60s and 70s, we kind of did that in our classrooms. It was just you had to wait for all the buses to get in kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as we look forward into the next quarter, anything that you want residents to know, just, budget-wise, or, going towards the end of the year? It's already January.
I know, and no snow days yet, so let's keep it that way, right? But this, for us, particularly in the central office and with the school committee, we start shifting to obviously paying attention to what's currently going on in the school system and in our schools, but preparing for next year. That's much of our work at this point.
And Chris?
I mean, right now, from a school committee standpoint, we're really knee-deep at the beginning, right as the front end of the budget season. So that's one of our big responsibilities as an elected official to the school committee, is oversight of the budget. So that's really what we're going to be spending a lot of our time on until we get that to the point we need to in April.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining
Thank you.
us.
Thanks.
Thank you.